Hey folks, and welcome to Typology, the show in which we explore the mystery of the human personality through the lens of the Enneagram. My name is Anthony Skinner. I'm the producer of the show. We're really happy to have you with us today. We've got an Enneagram 8. That's right, an 8 with a 7 wing. Super excited about that. Marcus Johns, he is an actor, musician, writer, and social content creator, best known for his viral vines. And when I say viral, I mean off the charts viral. He continues to entertain via YouTube. He's got a book called You Can't Do It. There are a million reasons you can't. Find the reason you can. So anyway, Marcus and his wife, Kristen, have just come through a horrific experience at the time that we did this interview. They were victims of a hit and run. And when I say hit and run, I mean, it was just so tragic. And thankfully, they are on the other side of this thing. And they didn't lose their lives, and we were so grateful for that. But we got an 8 at a time when he was going through some real life growing experiences. I mean, some real challenges, and he was looking at life really thoughtfully. And so we continue to be surprised and amazed at the depth and the beauty of the human person on this show. So super grateful to have Marcus on, and I know you're going to enjoy the interview. So without any further ado, here is the host of Typology, Ian Cron.
Marcus Johns, welcome to Typology.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. I've been looking forward to this conversation. When I told my kids you were going to be on, I was widely worshipped in my house.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They watch all of your content on your social platforms, and they're like,
Wow,
no, can we stand in the background and watch? I said, no, you're 29. You need to go to work.
That's amazing. Well, tell them thank you for keeping up with our stuff. That means a lot.
I will for sure. All right. So tell me, obviously we're a show about the Enneagram, and how did you learn about the Enneagram, and how did you figure out your type?
So I had a friend who came out probably 3 or 4 years ago to visit us, and they were talking about the Enneagram and what it means and what type of person you are. And if you learn your Enneagram number, you can learn how to deal with other people better. And so me and my wife both took the Enneagram test. And then from then on, it feels like every 6 months we take an Enneagram test when people are over, because we always want to see what the other person is. So I have a limited amount of information when it comes to Enneagram, but I know my number. So I'm 8 wing 7. And
yes. The most reckless number on the Enneagram.
Yeah, I've been told. So I almost feel bad every time I tell people I'm an 8 wing 7, because they're all either like the worst type of person or like they're heroes. And like, it's a very fine margin between like, you're either like Hitler or like Martin Luther King. And it's just like, hopefully I'm on the good side,
Yeah. Well, no number wants to go to its shadow side. That's for sure.
Right.
That doesn't just go for 8s. That pretty much goes for everybody,
Okay, good.
So our initial interview was scheduled and then had to be rescheduled because you and Kristen were hit by a car.
Yes.
And seriously injured. I mean, at the risk of not wanting to re-traumatize anybody, tell us what happened.
So me and my wife, we do nightly bike rides. Every evening we go for like a 30-minute bike ride just around our neighborhoods. And this was no different of a day. We were riding through a neighborhood, and I just saw a car going really, really fast down this neighborhood road. It's a dead-end street, and there was a stop sign like not too far in front of us. So I was going to assume he was going to stop. He didn't, and blew through that stop sign. And I knew he was going fast, and I didn't realize how fast he was going, but they estimate between 60 and 80 miles an hour. And he swerved into us, and we were on the far edge of the road. There's no sidewalks on this road, but it's a very wide, slow neighborhood street. And yeah, we got smashed, and I woke up in the hospital. I don't really remember much after that, but we found out that the police were chasing this car, and there was a police chase going on, and he smashed into us and didn't stop and got away. And so both me and my wife broke our legs. She broke her hip and her femur, and I broke my lower leg. And so we've been doing physical therapy. Our physical therapist just left. I'm able to now finally lift my leg straight up, which is nice. But I have limited mobility, and it just hurts to put any pressure on. So we've been walking on crutches and things for the last 2 months now, and it's yeah, it's been stinky.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's pretty intense, and I'm relieved that you're on the mend. But one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, you know, you're known for some comedic material, am I right?
Yeah.
That would be fair to say, right? How does an experience like this change you?
Oh man. I feel like even outside of the comedic stuff, like I was doing the comedy stuff, especially when I was younger, when I was like 19 to like 23. And then I've kind of done more of like kind of the YouTube lifestyle, just stuff with my wife. I guess I would still consider myself like, like wanting to do funny things on camera, but like I'm not doing like skit type material. Um, so I don't think I don't think that this accident has stopped me from like wanting to be funny or do lighthearted things, and making content like that. But I think it's changed my perspective in terms of, um, I think that I'm more sympathetic to everything now. And especially when it comes to people with, disabilities, or anyone who's gone through any type of like traumatic accident. I keep thinking about how when I was younger, I would hear people say, oh, they're so strong. They battled cancer and they came through it. And like my young mind at the time didn't really understand. I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, they're strong. That's really cool that they like made it through. But like, I didn't really understand how much mental and physical strength you have to do to just literally lay in a bed and survive sometimes. And like people have gone through way worse things than I have. And now I think just my perspective has grown so much. And I really, really value life and how amazing it is. And even that even though I can't walk and can't really get around the way I want to, it's just amazing to be alive. And so now that is my full perspective, is just how great life is. And I just don't take it for granted anymore. And I'm a lot more cautious. I was a pretty reckless person. I guess, that'll go into my Enneagram and you guys will diagnose me a bit more, but I always like to reinvent the wheel and do things differently. And I'm a very, very big risk taker. And now physically, when it comes to things like, even when I just see my neighbor's kids on the sidewalk, just on their scooters, and a car goes by, like I freak out and I just go,
Yeah, sure.
they need to wear helmets. And I was never cautious like that before. So yeah, I think I definitely am just more cautious, and I value life more. And I don't know if I will be the risk taker that I was when it comes to physical activities. It just changes you. Yeah.
All right. So you've been laying in bed, for how long now?
Since May 11th. So
Since May 11th.
yeah,
Okay.
like just under 2 months.
So, all right. So you've had a lot of time to think.
Yeah.
And, when we go through times of crisis, I think certain themes emerge over and over and over again in our minds when you're in a room by yourself. And especially as an 8, that, 8s are not typically very self-reflective numbers, like they don't spend a lot of time thinking internally. Like I'm a 4, man. I'm always thinking internally. I'm always feeling things internally. 8s tend to be very much externally focused, not internally focused, right? So here you are, you're in a room, and you're forced to slow down. You're forced to chill. What are some of the themes and ideas, dare I say, feelings, you've mentioned some already, but that just keep coming up for you, that are surprising, maybe difficult to think about, maybe really great to think about? But what just keeps coming up over and over and over again as a theme, beyond I'm just really glad to be alive?
Well, first off, just saying, hearing that of like 8s are usually externally thinking. I can say right when I woke up, it was, how's my wife doing? Is she alive? Are we gonna make a full recovery? But the first week when I was in the hospital, I distracted myself in talking to the police and getting the full story and going on full detective mode, trying to find this guy. Who is he? Where is he? What's going on? So I definitely, now you saying that, I definitely realize I kind of was like how can I get my attention off of my leg and like what's happening with me and try to fix the situation. And so that was it for the first week. And then after it was, I'm sitting here and my leg is not going to come back and as fast as I want it to. But I think, man, it's just funny that you say that, because now my wheels are spinning about how I'm constantly trying to fix and set goals and say, oh, they say I can't walk for 4 months, I'm going to walk in 2, and like all of these benchmarks. But one of the feelings, let me think, like one of the feelings that I was feeling that was different would just be, I think I just became more sympathetic in general. I know I've already kind of given this answer, but I became more sympathetic to, honestly, like everyone. I feel like I'm more patient now. I feel like I'm a lot more patient, and I'm a lot more, I think I feel like I can look now at life and go, oh, I'm not going to get that tomorrow, and that's okay. And I think I'm like finally kind of reconciling with like not being able to control things and being able to just go, life is going to happen. It's going to take its twists and turns, and I'm going to be okay. I have to be okay with not being able to control certain things in my life.
That's what I was going to ask. I'm sorry. I was going to ask, the control is such a central theme for the 8s. And you're kind of addressing that already, but what did it feel like to have something, so huge, and for things to be so beyond your control? Like, what did that feel like when you first were facing that feeling, or that reality, I should say?
These are, I've never thought about these things until you're asking me. So it's really, you guys are like really like hitting me here right now. It's kind of making me emotional. Can you rephrase the question? Because I really want to think about this.
Yeah, let me put it this way. So every type has an unconscious motivation that drives the way they act, think, and feel on a regular basis. They don't know what it is, but it's kind of driving the show, right?
Right.
And for the 8, the unconscious motivation is a compulsive need to assert strength and control over the environment and other people in order to push away feelings of vulnerability and to hide them from other people. And so I think that's part of the reason we're asking the questions we're asking, which is, if you're an 8, this experience is pretty intense, right? Just for an 8 to say, I've learned that I'm not in control is like a major breakthrough.
Huge.
Like for an 8 to say that, it's like, what? Like an 8 might double down, right? And do precisely the opposite. But it's interesting. You're actually kind of surprising me. You have guests on and you make guesses in your head, like, okay, what's this going to be like, right? Sure. You have a softer, more vulnerable self-presentation than I would have guessed.
I think that for a lot of people, I think because most people, when they see the Vine videos and the persona that you put out, they see the wacky, crazy Jim Carrey-esque guy who's just loud and very much and boisterous and like that. But I think my truer self is kind of more like when I'm in a situation like this, where it doesn't matter to me how many people are going to be on the other side of the screen seeing this video. Doesn't matter. It's just I'm here in a room by myself talking to 2 people, and I feel like this is not a lot of people get to see this side of me, but this I feel like is definitely my truer self. If I'm putting it out on my platform, like I know that it's going to hit this many people, and I know exactly where it's going to go and how far it's going to be, then I'm in control of that situation. I'm going to put out a certain type of self, if that makes sense. But in this situation, I think that, I can be a bit more how people and friends would know me in like a more intimate setting.
So it's interesting you use the word persona, That's a very three-ish word.
Mm.
Threes are
I
known.
have threes. I've tested like pretty high on the 3 too. And one of the times that I've taken the test, I've also gotten every single number evenly before. And that they said that's like split personality, and that's really bad. So I was like, what the heck? But
Yeah,
I also took that when I was with other people in the room. So people go, oh, you're not like that. And then you change your number or whatever it is. So
yeah, yeah. So to have two personas, right? The real you and then the professional platform you, right?
and I think there's
Uh,
almost impossible to not do that in terms of like it being your
yeah,
work, your job,
I
to a
totally get it. No, I totally get it. Um, but the question I'm asking is, eights are really bad usually at persona.
mm.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
they can't control the way that they are. They just are, and you just take them as they are.
yeah, they're kind of like, actually, a lot of times eights are put off by people that have a persona because they tend to be suspicious of hidden agendas.
Mm,
Like, why is this person? Why do I get the sense this person isn't acting like who they really are right now? And
right.
it would kind of send a flag up the pole of an eight. You know what I'm saying?
Sure, yeah.
So I was just curious about that and your experience of being an eight.
Yeah, it's so weird. I definitely too. I mean, I don't know what number this particular number is, but I know that there is a number that's like their number is, oh, I'm not that number, and you can't put me in a box, and what is it? It's a 4, right? Okay,
Yeah.
yes, I thought so. And I feel like I have a little bit of that too. I always constantly want to. I don't want to be put into a box, and I don't want people to be like, "Oh, you're this number, so you're an 8, and you're like this." And like, to be honest, like part of me part of me doesn't want to like say I'm an 8 and think of every single thing like through the crash and through my book writing and everything through the lens of an 8. Like that is also something that is it's difficult for me because I feel like I'm a lot of different numbers, if you will, and
Yeah.
I think is it not true that we all have a certain degree of number? It's just what number shines forth the most to a certain
Yes, that's
degree.
true. That's
So
true.
I feel like I kind of have that also at the same time. So it's definitely hard for me to think like, what is my, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
Sometimes I say I'm just me, and you guys diagnose me and let me know what number I am. Maybe you guys
no,
are like,
no,
oh,
no,
you're
no,
like this, but yeah.
no, man. Actually, the thing about the Enneagram that's so great is that the only person who can actually validate or verify their number is the person
Mm,
themselves. You know what I'm saying? So like if you have friends telling you, oh, you're an 8, it's like you should just tell them to shut up, man, because actually it's not their business. You know what I mean?
right,
Like it's really between you and you, you
right,
know? The
right.
other thing is, yeah, you contain all 9 numbers for sure, right?
Mm,
And I think yes, we have one that we kind of major in,
sure,
like it's our jam most of the time.
right.
But we can go other places. And what's interesting is that when an 8 is under a lot of stress,
Uh-huh.
they go to 2.
Really?
Yeah.
And what is it to the
I mean,
service?
I'm sorry. I mean, when they're in a good space, they go to 2.
They're
And
perceived as a 2, or their personality
yeah,
becomes a true 2?
you know your number never changes,
Right.
but under stress or security you can begin to act, look, and feel a little bit more like another number, but your
Right.
unconscious motivation doesn't change.
What is the
And
2
that's
again?
called the helper, or
Right.
sometimes the befriender. And
Right.
maybe what I'm picking up on is the gentleness of that
Mm.
in this moment.
You know what's interesting? That my family always tells me this. I'm more hard on the people that I'm closest with, and when I meet someone for the first time, I'm just like, anything you want. What do you want to do? And I definitely think that is kind of my first. Like, I'm a very I am an extrovert, and I do have to kind of recluse and do my own thing. But I think 80% of the time I'm an extrovert. I want to talk to people, and I'm very giving when I first meet people. But then, my family will say, that I'm very giving to people that I don't know. I'm more critical of the people that I'm closest with. And
Hmm.
I don't know if that has to pertain to kind of the 8 flipping to a 2 to certain degrees, because I feel
Yeah.
comfortable with the people that I'm closest with, and I can go like, don't do that or whatever it is, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's clear, and I think this is true for everybody, right? Like Marcus Johns is not an 8. You know, you're not a number as a human
Sure.
being,
Right. Right.
right? That you're not a category, you're not a label.
Right.
And the Enneagram at best is, you know, provides a low resolution picture of what the inside of what somebody is like. You know, it's
Right.
not like some magical Harry Potter instrument that, you know, gives us insight into you that no one else could ever find, you
Sure.
know. It's a wonderful instrument. It does some really, really cool things. It helps us develop self-awareness and self-knowledge. It
Mhm.
helps us move through the world more intelligently and with more love and compassion, you know,
Mhm.
if we do our work with it. But it doesn't define somebody, you know. In
Right.
fact, what it does in some ways is it tells you who you aren't. That that
Hmm.
that your type is really just a collection of defense mechanisms and accommodations you had to make as a little person in order to get by in the world.
Ah, and is that I've heard something about that, but does your Enneagram almost come out of your experience in your environment from when you are, you know, developing as a child fully?
Totally.
Really?
Yeah.
So so
Yeah.
it's always learned. It's never genetic. It's mostly learned from what we understand.
Mm, no, I mean, it depends on who you talk to in the Enneagram
Right.
world. I
Right.
would say that part of it is you were just born that way. Like I have an 8 daughter,
Right.
okay?
Yep.
And she came out ready to rock, man. I mean, she just seriously, like, she would tear the house apart. She was like, she just was fire, man. She just came out like fire.
Right.
I have a 9 daughter, and she came out like the freaking Dalai Lama. You know, she's just such a peacemaker.
Right.
And I have a 7 son who, you know, the enthusiast just came out funny. I mean, like, you know, a little entertainer, you know. So I think part of it is genes, and it's just in the bone and the blood,
Right.
you know. But a lot of it is what we learn from our family of origin, what we learn from coaches and teachers and peers and our neighborhood. You know, like I was on with someone a while back, Propaganda. You remember that interview, Anthony?
Mhm.
And he was saying that, you know, he grew up in a tough part of LA, and he's like, you know, I'm a 3, but growing up I had to act like an 8, otherwise I'd have gotten killed,
Right.
you
Wow.
know. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that your personality, in many ways, what the Enneagram reveals is this is who you had to be as a little person in
Right.
order to survive in the world, right? But the things that serve you as a little kid don't help you as an adult.
Right.
So the Enneagram kind of reveals what doesn't help you anymore.
Right. So it's almost
And
like you're born with a certain innate trait number, if you will, but then your environment kind of your environment shapes whether you became a healthy that number or an unhealthy that number. More or less.
yeah, and actually health or unhealth in your personality does this throughout the day,
Right. Interesting.
right? Like you can have a phone call at 10 a.m. that's like, oh man, it puts you in a really great space, you know,
Right.
and I, you know, and then 3 hours later, something else happens and it's like, whoa, you know, you go way down. And then, so, you know, so personality is fluid, it's adaptive, it's never static, you
Right.
know, it's always kind of moving around,
So
which
true.
is, I'm always telling people that, you know, the word self is a verb, it's not a noun. You're always
That's good.
you're more of a process than you are anything else. You're constantly changing, you know, this conversation started 10 minutes ago. You will never be that person again.
Mhm.
Mm.
But we don't tend to see ourselves that way.
Yeah, that is true. And also too, like everything you read or everything that I've read about the Enneagram is if you're a bad person, you're like this, and if you're a good person, your number's like this. But it's true. It's like you can have a stomach ache or whatever and be, you know, the bad version of yourself because, or you just found out some type of news, whatever it is. But Yeah, because when you read those things, you tell yourself, oh, well, I'm not like that. I can't be like that. But everyone is good and bad all the time, flip flopping depending on their emotions.
Oh,
So it's
oh
always
yeah,
important to
totally.
keep that in check. And by understanding your number, you can understand, oh, I'm starting to do this right now. And since I have an objective kind of description of how I can get sometimes, I can notice that I'm doing that and go, I'm not going to act like this right now. Let me rein it back or whatever that.
Totally. And that's a really great insight, right? Like what the Enneagram does is it gives you not only this uncannily accurate description of your personality, right? The way, and I would describe personality as how you show up for life. Like it just describes how you typically show up for life, right? And, but if you're using the Enneagram for personal and spiritual growth, what it also gives you is this like little internal witness that can stand back. And because you know yourself so much better, you can say, uh-oh, I know how this ends. If I keep acting this way, I know how this ends. So I think I'm going to make a different choice this time.
Right. This might be a little bit off topic, but I realize because you're a 4 and you are typically, I think part of that is you kind of reject being something or being put into a box. The fact that your interest in Enneagrams and being able to kind of diagnose or look at people through the lens of Enneagrams, I find is interesting. Do you think that's kind of uncommon for a 4?
No.
Really?
And that's no, because like my whole life, everything I've ever done has been kind of focused on trying to figure out what makes people
Oh, right.
who
Yeah,
they
what is
are.
the greater part of the 4 again? Just one more time, if you can remind me.
Yeah. So a 4 is somebody who grows up believing that there's something fundamentally missing or essentially wrong at the center of their being, right? They tend to be very disproportionately represented in the arts. A lot of great music can be written out of that feeling of brokenness, right? We all know that. And so we're sort of as little people launched on a quest to find the missing piece in ourselves, right? And so I've always been someone who's very curious. And by the way, one of our superpowers is empathy, right? And like the first thing, we get one of these every time we do a show, right? It's a it is. It's a publicist sheet, and they'll have suggested questions, and I never look at them,
Right.
because I'm not really interested in them.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to ask questions about, so tell me why you wrote this book. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like,
of course.
oh God, again. So it's like, I want to know about your interior world. I want to know about who you are. I want to know about your soul. Those are the kinds of things that interest a 4.
Right.
Yeah, so on that, I wonder if we got off of this without actually getting to the question. So something that Ian says often, which I love, is you are not your personality, right? So we're talking about personality, but there's something underneath that. And one of the beautiful things about the Enneagram is, as you discover sort of the driving part of your personality, it allows you to undo that, to get down to what's underneath, to the you that's underneath that. And a driving part of your personality as an 8 would be this idea of control. And there was a moment when I asked you that question, what?
Nice. Rephrase it.
Yeah, and we sort of moved off of it.
Sure. I wanted to get back to it. Yeah.
I just wonder, when you realized that things were out of your control, and you were there in bed. I mean, you couldn't even help Kristen, right? That's her name. It's your wife's name, right?
Yes. Yep.
You couldn't help yourself. You couldn't help her. You were totally. It was beyond your control, and you found something in that moment, because you've referenced it here a few times. And I just wonder what the sort of the immediate feeling was, and where that led you.
Ultimately, it was that God's in control, and I have to relinquish my control, and I have to understand that there's a king higher than me. I'm the king of my own life, And then when you get smacked by a car, you go, oh, right,
Mm.
there's a king that's greater than me. And then, and actually there, it's as an 8, it can be hard, but it's very peaceful when you know, okay, like I'm serving a king ultimately, and that's okay. And there's someone who knows better than me, because yeah, I'm laying in a bed, I can't do anything, I can't even bend my arms. My legs broke, and I can't move my arms because I have these IVs in. I'm pressing a button to go to the bathroom, and no one's coming, and it's just like, oh, but life's good because here I am and I'm alive, and like I give up control, God, it's all good. And I think that was like, that's where you find the peace ultimately, is when you stop having to think like, yeah, I'm in control all the time.
Mm.
Yeah, and maybe that's what I'm picking up in the softness that I don't normally pick up in an 8.
Mm.
Like 8s are usually more aggressive.
Mm. I can be. Don't play board games with me.
Yeah. Don't worry. I've played board games with you, man.
When it's here, it's me, but when you get hit by a car, it's much bigger, and you can pull back and realize that. Yeah.
Well, you grow up fast when things happen like that,
Yeah, it's good. I'm actually glad that it happened to me. It sucks, but I'm going to be way cooler of a person now.
All right. So you have this new book, right? Today's the 26th.
Right.
Did it drop on the 23rd?
The 23rd officially, yeah.
Okay. So congratulations. Hard work, right?
Yes.
So the name of the book is Find the Reason. No, it's called You Can't Do It. There are a million reasons you can't. Find the reason you can. Go ahead, hold up the cover. You can hold up the cover. It's all good.
I'll have, I just have.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Woohoo. We got to give you the big shout out for that.
Thank you.
Got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
How would that book be written differently if you had done it after this accident?
It would probably fully revolve around this accident, to be honest. This book was written in a time when I was trying to, a big part of my headspace when I was writing this book was I was trying to put on this musical. And I had a lot of people tell me that, I couldn't do it, more or less, here and there. And then, looking through that lens of my whole life about how I'm very motivated when people say that I can't do something, and I wanted to kind of write about those experiences. I really do love to reinvent the wheel, even if it's worse. I'm going to make a triangular wheel and say it's awesome, and I really like to take on challenges head on, and I like, getting in over my head. And so the musical was something that I was working on for like a few years. And when I had finally accomplished it and I'd put it on stage, and it was about my whole experience about Vine and social media, and then the ups and downs. That was very relevant and very pertinent to my life at the time then. And even still now, it's like, yeah, if I'm writing a book now, of course, it's going to be fully different perspective and all of that. But it doesn't mean that this isn't also a perspective of me. And this also more goes into kind of my journey, getting to, being a social media kind of influencer and kind of running around Hollywood and like losing myself and all of that. And then now it would definitely, if I were to write something, I've already written about that. And now, yes, I'm a fully different person, I guess, after this accident. And what's interesting too is like, as I've been doing these interviews and stuff, when something happens to you, it's crazy. But then, there's a certain point where, you think about it, but then you kind of bounce back and you're like, okay, I need to get back to my regular life. And you just start moving and doing. But other people look at it from the outside going, oh my gosh, you got hit by a car and you flew 50 feet. And they didn't go through it. So they're just kind of like, it's even more like, wow. But since when you've gone through it, and you've gone through it for so long, you're kind of just putting your head down and wanting to just kind of like run through it. But the more I talk to other people and the more they go, wow, this is crazy, tell me about it, I'm now having to reflect. And this whole interview process has been very therapeutic for me because we haven't, it's been so soon. We haven't talked to, a therapist or anything. And I never have really, like, growing up. So it's been very therapeutic for me to realize, wow, this was a crazy accident. And wow, this has changed me. And it makes me stop and reflect. And it's actually been very nice to do that. So yeah, I think all that to say, I know it was a long ramble, is the more I talk about it, the more I realize, wow, this is a life-defining moment in my life. I'll look back when I'm 60 and go, yeah, I got hit by a car when I was 27 with my wife, and we almost died, and it was insane, and I probably should have died, and for some reason I'm still here. And what's my mission, and what do I need to talk about? And so, yeah, if I were to write it today, it would be fully different. That's for sure.
What would the title be now? If it was written today, what would the title be now?
Oh man, I don't know. I do not know. I'd have to think about it. I can't say right now. I'm very specific about titles too. Like I can't write or do something until I have the title.
Okay.
But in this case, it's I don't know. Smashed by a car. I don't know. It's just like when it would be something. I would honestly be something probably funny, like when life smashes you or something like that, or like something about like some.
Smashed by a car. 5 reasons not to get smashed by a car.
I know, that's like the worst. That's literally the worst answer ever. But I do not know. I don't know.
Don't worry about it, man.
It is a hard. If it were to be written, it would probably be co-written by my wife also too, because she's gone through more than I have really in terms of medical complications and stuff. So it would be a fully different experience. I would say that.
So let's talk about you and your wife. She's a 3, right?
She's a 3.
And you're an 8. What's that like? What's the dynamic of that? How long have you been married?
Well, she's a 6 too. She's taken it once and has gotten a 6 really quick. Is there a 3 and 6 thing at all?
There's a relationship potentially between a 3, a 6, and a 9. Those 3 numbers share a line on the Enneagram.
Okay.
So when your wife is in a really, good space, she acts like a really healthy 6. And when she's in a bad space, she acts like a really unhealthy 9.
Okay. I want to know
what the answer. Yeah, okay.
You've been married 3 years. I think you started to say something about that.
Yeah, no. Okay, so tell me about the dynamic of being an 8 married to a 3. As you said to me earlier before we started, right? Like that's the power couple, and it would be a power couple. What's the dynamic like?
I would say, I'm gonna get in trouble if she ever watches this. No, I would say when I first met Kristen, she was a church mouse ultimately, and she didn't really have a platform, and she didn't want to do anything in terms of public speaking or anything like that. And so when I met her, I just thought she was incredible, and on the first date, I told her like we're gonna get married and all of this, and this was kind of at the height of like my fame on Vine and all of that in college, and so I moved to LA and we did long distance for 3.5 years, and during that time of long distance, and even before meeting her, I was my own man, and I was doing social media, and I was, living in this building with all these Viners, and it was a crazy time in my life, but I was the boss of my own life, and I didn't have to answer ultimately to anyone, especially because of the long distance stuff too. And I think when we got married, when you get married, your life changes, and then you have a full-blown partner. And Kristen is very good at curating and making aesthetics and like just building a home, and she's actually much better than I am at social media in terms of like design and aesthetic and upkeep and posting often. I'm more someone who's just like, I'm just gonna put out what I'm wearing on I wear my emotions on my sleeve for the most part, I would say, and I'm not afraid to just kind of blurt out what I'm thinking. I think that's probably the most interesting thing for my audience. And I was reckless, and I think people kind of liked that chaotic energy, but I wasn't necessarily good at it. I'm not necessarily good at being like, I'm going to post an Instagram story that's going to be engaging in a calculated way. If it's engaging and you're listening to me, it's just you're engaged by my personality, and it really has nothing to do with anything I'm consciously thinking about. So the point being, she's good. She's better than I am at social media, but social media was my thing for the longest time. And then I started to kind of grow sick of social media because I did it for many years, and it kind of got old, and I didn't want to do the same lame skit over and over again. So I wanted to, do other things. And I think that there was kind of the shift between like the internet was and the audience was kind of like more about me centered, and Kristen was like my girlfriend, and so people started following her. But now Kristen is the front runner. Kristen is the person that kind of people fall to, and I'm more the fun, zany side character in her story. And I think like, I'm actually very glad that that was the case, because I probably would have just thrown away everything that I had built, because I'm always on to the new task. I think that's the 7 in me, is being like, what can I forge? What's the new task? I've already done it. I don't care about it. But Kristen did the upkeep and curated that content in that audience, and has cultivated that. And so now that I'm kind of getting back into that and getting back into the whole social media side of things, I have that innate 8 of being like, I did this once and I'm very good at it, and I know how to get, and I got millions of followers and I can do this, you know. And then Kristen has been the one who's like, well, like I've been doing this, and like, you know, I've kept this up. And so like there is this kind of like there's this dynamic in terms of like what people see from the outside of like, you know, social media being our full-time job, being influencers, being content creators. There is kind of this thing where it's like, now Kristen is the boss, she's the captain of the ship, and she's like, I think we should do this video, and I'll say, you know, well, what? And I feel like now there is this kind of, there's this thing where I feel like I knew what I was doing at 19 years old, and I could just do whatever I want and go, you know, hang off a bridge and do wacky things and it would work. But now I'm too old, and I don't want to be doing those things, but I don't know how to, it's hard to say. I'm really trying to think about this and say it the right way. I know that I have to, I know I'm not the young hotshot that I was, but I still have that urge to be like, I want to go build the paramotor and fly off of a mountain. And Kristen saying, you're not going to do that because we're going to have kids and you're going to live, you know, more or less. And that is kind of the struggle that I have of being like, wait, I was the boss. I knew what I was doing. And now I'm kind of like, and now Kristen is the boss. You know? So, and so I guess that is like, if I'm really trying to hyper focus on a characterization of the struggle of 8 verse 3, that would be it. But it is more or less pretty, you know, harmonic, you know, in terms of the house, and we mostly, you know, agree and all that. But I would say the public perception of what people see as Marcus and Kristen in the power couple, that would be probably the dynamic. Is Kristen is the 3, she actually knows how to put on, you know, the face and do that, and I'm kind of more of the I'm just going to be me and do it, and people will like it. And Kristen will be like, you probably shouldn't say that, Marcus. And I'm like, don't tell me how to say it. You know. And that's it. That would probably be the dynamic.
Well, that sounds pretty 3-8ish.
Yeah. That's that is probably the roughest dynamic, I would say. I'm painting it in the worst picture possible so you guys can dissect it a bit more for me and tell me what I should do when I'm doing things wrong.
Well, maybe if we had 20 more sessions, we could do that. But that's expensive. But anyway, the book, right? You can't do it. There are a million reasons you can't. Find the reason you can, right? So tell me about how spirituality fits into your life and into the story of this book.
It's most of the chapters are talking about how you can overcome it, how you can do it, and how, and in my perspective on of liking the challenge and wanting to prove people wrong, and it kind of goes on this, you know, trend of like of noticing when people are telling you no and how you get around. And then the last chapter ultimately goes, you can't do it. You have to give up something, and sometimes you can't do what you want to do, and you have to rely on God to be able to get that done. And so that is hopefully the thing that people take away is the through line is you ultimately can't do it. It's not a ironic, you know, title of a book, so people will kind of look at it and go, oh, it's this ironic title and I can figure out how I can do it. It's like, no, you can't. You have to rely on God to just get through life. You do. And I think that's and for me and Kristen too, that's the glue that holds us together is our relationship with God, and in having that foundation and having that, bedrock for our relationship, so that when, we both have different plans, we ultimately come back to, okay, what's God's plan for us, in seeking him. So yeah.
I've been in a 12-step recovery program for a long time, decades, for drug and alcohol addiction. And one of the, it's goofy, but in this particular recovery community, we have all these goofy sayings, like
Mhm.
it's like these, and they're reminders, that's all they are. They're platitudes that are actually helpful, especially in the beginning when you're trying to pull your life back together, right? And one of them is, let God do for you what you cannot do for yourself.
Mm.
And that sounds like what you're aiming at in that last chapter.
Yeah. Yes.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is,
It's
it, is that kind of it?
yes. That's said perfectly, I would say.
And on that note, we'll close out the interview. Man, let me ask you a question. A friend comes to you and does say, I really want to do this. I
Mm.
have so many reasons that I want to do this. And there are so many reasons why I can't, right? What would you tell them?
It depends on the person, but I think that most people who have those feelings are, I think the thing that holds people back the most is the fear of failure, the fear of, well, but what if I'm bad, or what if it doesn't work out? My mindset has always been, okay, so what? Like, it doesn't work out. I guess I have that innate, 8 built into myself, where I don't care what people think. Okay, yeah, I sucked. That's fine. I'm going to go on to the next thing. But I think people are very scared and crippled by fear. And the older you get, the more things you fail at, and the harder it is for you to go, oh, but I remember I failed at this, and I remember I failed at that. I was very lucky that I had a string of successes as I was younger, all the way up to, I got on social media and I got on Vine, and, I had all these successes of, I auditioned for the musical and I got the lead, and these little things that kind of shape you as you get older. I was lucky in all of those situations. I could have auditioned for that, my senior musical, and not gotten the lead and go, like, I'm not going to pursue singing anymore. Like, I'm not good. Clearly I didn't get the role, but like, I did for whatever reason. Maybe it's because I just look the part. But you have these things that happen to you in life that tell you, that reinforce these things of, oh, I can make it, or I can do it, or, oh, I failed. And as I've gotten older, I've had more of those experiences, because you get more gutsy and you're like, oh, I keep winning, I'm going to keep doubling down. And, now that I'm older, I have things where it's like, oh, that didn't work out. That wasn't great. But you still have to push through that failure, I think. And you still have to find a way to not be afraid of failure, because my dad always says this. He just says, the worst they can say is no. Like, when it comes to an idea or whatever it is, the worst they can say is no. And I always liked hearing that. And if I can just kind of put that, if I can fit that into whatever I'm going into, the worst that can happen is X. And generally the worst that can happen is really not that bad, if you think about it. And I think, like, playing the mind game of, like, well, what is the worst that can happen? And when you say it out loud, it kind of deflates, the worst thing that can happen. You go, yeah, well, I'm going to do it. The experience is worth it enough, even if it doesn't pan out. So that would be, I guess, a very long answer to that question.
No, it's a very good answer. My my manager always says, when we're about to start something new, he'll go, all right, let's go out there and make a really big mistake,
Yeah.
Which always makes me laugh and always actually encourages me, because it's like, hey, let's just go out there and make a really big mistake and see what happens,
Just like, if you just own, like, yeah, I suck. Yeah, it was bad. Then if you're the one who's saying it, if other people say it, it's like, what are they doing? They're beating a dead horse, and it just deflates it. If you can swallow that pill before it even starts, it's like you've already won. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's beautiful. All right, so here's my last question. you've got this platform. People know you and your wife
Mm-hmm.
on a platform,
Mm.
right? Which is a lot different than, it's just interesting to me, like even as an author, right? Like I wrote a memoir a couple of years ago, and what was so interesting about it is how people would approach me and talk to me as if they knew me. Do you know what I mean? And I'd
Yeah,
be like,
totally.
well, that was, I mean, a memoir does tell you a lot of things about me, but it doesn't mean you know me,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And just because you're funny, or because now you're doing more lifestyle stuff,
Mm-hmm.
just because you see pictures of us in our home, you know, it doesn't mean that you actually know me.
Yeah.
Right. So my question to you is, what would be one thing that would surprise your followers to know about you that you actually haven't really revealed?
I feel like we try to reveal everything in time. It's hard to know what I haven't put out, to be honest. I don't know. I would say, I mean, I could give you a stupid answer like I have a 12 bikes in my backyard. No one knows about that. I have 12 bikes in my backyard, and I'm taking them all apart and I'm welding them, and I like to create and doodle things. But I really wish I could give you a better answer about, oh, my soul longs to be this. But I think that most people know. I think an example. I think someone just watching this video, kind of. I think the average person, the average follower doesn't really know. Probably my more like searching for words side. My more insightful side. I think people kind of just think Marcus is the guy who's in Kristen's videos. Like, yeah, you know. I think that's what people see, you know, and it's easy to do that and to be that person and to get a laugh, and it's more engaging. But I think there is like, you know, sitting there and searching for words and really being insightful isn't as clickbaity, and it's not as exciting to watch. But I hope that when people watch videos like this of me, they'll go, oh, he's a bit more of a well-rounded person than, you know,
Than a persona.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I wish we had more time to talk about this, but really is every single person that you know on social media is, they do have a certain persona that they have to put out, because it's only efficient. You can't put out everything. And if you do put everything, then where's the mystery? So there also has to be a certain layer of, you have to be sane in this industry. You have to only put out a certain part of yourself, because you put out everything, you don't have anything left for you. And so I think that's kind of built in. But, you know, maybe the intrigue of it is that there are things that you will never know about me, and you kind of have to do that to be, you know, a real person, or to be a person who can stay in entertainment, or do a podcast or anything, you know, without, because I've seen too many people burn out, you know, on just like they put everything out, and I don't think that's sustainable, you know.
Yeah, you know, I have a friend of mine he's actually a very well-known frontman for a band. And I kind of asked him the same question over dinner one night. He said, well, here's what I do. He said, when I go out on stage, or, you know, out on tour or something like that, I go in my closet and I put on my blankety blank, it's his name, my blank suit, you know?
Right.
And then when I come home, I take off my blank suit and I put it back in the closet.
Yeah.
You know? And I don't put it back on again until I get on the bus, you know, and go back out.
Partition his life. He can have his job and he can have his family life and his, you know, you have to have that, I think.
To be a real person.
Yes.
Yeah, to be a real person. Hey, everybody, I want you to go out and make sure, I want you to promise me you're going to go out and buy Marcus John's new book. You can't do it. There are a million reasons you can't. Find the reason you can. It only dropped 3 days ago. The ink is still wet on the pages. Go get this book, and while you're at it, say a few prayers for him and his wife, Kristen, that they will recover and become more beautiful as a result of the experience in some way. Marcus, thank you for being with us, man.
Thanks for having me. This was awesome.
Yeah, it was really fun. And Typology listeners, we love you. We think the world of you. We're so honored that you take time to to listen to us as we try to explore life through the lens of the Enneagram. And don't forget the words of the great Oscar Wilde: be yourself, everybody else is already taken. Until next time.